Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Relationship Pod. If you're new here, this is the place where we talk about all things relationships, whether it's building a better relationship with yourself, breaking toxic patterns, or just learning how to become a better communicator to the people in your life. I'm your host, Sarah Boutros, a relationship coach that helps women build more confidence and security in their relationships. And today's episode is a very special one, especially if you are someone who has struggled with anxiety, perfectionism, and people pleasing. Today, I am joined by Latta, who has dedicated her career to helping people overcome perfectionism, people pleasing, and anxiety through the power of play. I think she is really innovating in this healing self development space by bringing more joy and light into these really, really heavy topics. And I'm so excited for her to join us today to share all of her wisdom and knowledge on how we can improve our perfectionist tendencies and how we can let go of control by allowing ourselves to just have more fun. And I'm someone who has personally gone through all of these things myself and worked with Cara one on one in her coaching program. So I can attest to how powerful this work is. I'm really excited for this conversation. Grab your notebook, take some notes, and let's get stuck in. So, welcome.
Yay.
It's so good to have you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. It is so fun to reconnect with you.
Yeah, it's been, wow, such a long time, but I
Mhm.
still remember everything that you taught me, and I highly encourage my clients as well to do some of the playful exercises that I've learned from you. So yeah, I'm super excited to have you here today. Um, your I wanted to kind of introduce this podcast with understanding your story and how you actually ended up getting into even thinking about play as an approach to how people deal with perfectionism and anxiety, because it is such a heavy topic, and play is so associated with like light and fun. So how did you end up in a place where you discovered that as a healing tool for you?
Yeah, it was definitely an unexpected journey. It was not something I really planned. I had been working in public relations for 10 years in senior management until essentially 2020. And I was quite honestly miserable. Like, I knew that was not the path I was meant to be in. I was also always like a mega perfectionist, people pleaser, like very burnt out, working long days at various agencies in toxic roles. And yeah, life was really heavy. I definitely felt really disconnected from myself. And it wasn't until I discovered inner child healing and going to therapy that I started seeing traction for myself, healing, childhood trauma, becoming more self-aware, learning to develop more emotional intelligence, like all these really beautiful things. But I also found that the healing path was so heavy. I
Mm-hmm.
would leave like my therapy sessions feeling, like there was growth, and I love therapy and I recommend it so much. But it was just so heavy and like uncovering, childhood trauma and all these things that I got to a point with my therapist where my therapist actually recommended to me, like, you need play. Like, I can just see how everything is for you, because also this was kind of like 2019 is where I went through what I call like a dark night of the soul, where I had a serious relationship and I had a really bad cockroach infestation, actually, which, like, if you've ever gone through it, it's really traumatic, actually, having them like everywhere. So I had like so much anxiety. I had health struggles as well with like epilepsy and not feeling safe enough to share it with the world. And again, just like uncovering all this trauma. And so it got to this kind of point where then in 2020, March 2020, I ended up losing my job because of COVID and like the marketing budget going. And it was actually a really big gift for myself because I wasn't leaving that position, even though I knew it was not right for me. And so once I had that job let go, I had some time to be with myself. And there was this like really deep heaviness and a seriousness. Like, I was so serious about life. And so when my therapist suggested, like, you need to play more, I got really curious. I loved that idea. Like, I grew up being a dancer. I was like a theater kid as when I was really young. I loved the theater, but I noticed that all the play I did was very competitive. It was very perfectionistic, which wasn't really the true spirit of play. Like if I was dancing, it had to look good. I wouldn't do like ballet or something that I didn't think I was good at. I was only doing the styles I thought I was good at. There was still this underlying theme of like proving myself. I wouldn't do art, for example, because I thought I was a terrible artist. So it was very much under this guise of like perfectionism. And so it was like, okay, how do I unlearn that? How do I play for just the sake of playing, for learning to have fun, learning that I'm worthy regardless of the outcome I create, actually learning to be in the present. And so that was something that was challenging for me. And so I started looking for resources. Okay, how do adults genuinely play? Because everything I could find, I'm in Toronto, Canada, was like, yeah, it was very competitive. It was very like about proving your worth. So like, how do I play with my inner child in a way that's healing, where I'm not putting all this pressure on myself? And I honestly just couldn't find resources for how to do that. I found a lot of science about why play was important for the brain and our mental health and our physical health and all these things. That was great. Like that was nice, just because there is so much messaging that play is just for kids, or it's silly, or it's immature. And so it was really fun to dive into the science behind like actually play is so incredibly important for adults and we really need it. There was just no like how to play as an adult, and I kind of just needed this guidebook for how to do that. And so because I had just let go for my job, I kind of had this time with myself. So I was just kind of like diving into my inner child, leaning into self trust, like wondering how could I play? And I started creating this list of ways to play and just doing it myself, not as a business idea at all. And just kind of started playing every day with myself. And as I started doing that, I noticed like, wow, I feel so creative. I feel so much better like in my body. I feel just like I have a better like adaptability. I'm navigating challenges easier. Like I feel like I am deepening my relationships with people. So there were all these shifts happening where I was like, okay, wow, play is so powerful. And I felt this intuitive nudge that, wow, this is actually your calling to bring this to people, bring play to adults as a healing vehicle. Because I also understood where play can be really hard. Like I understand for people how hard play can be when we are the recovering perfectionist. And so it wasn't like it came easy to me naturally. Like it was a journey. So I kind of felt like I was that right person who really understood like all the conditioning that makes it so hard to play, but also just how powerful it is and how we need it. And so then that kind of just evolved into a business. It was really scary to become a play coach, I will say, like just given my really professional PR background and like pivoting into this. So that was a journey on its own. But yeah, that was kind of how I ended up being a play coach.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so beautiful, that journey that you had to discovering how to play as an adult. And you mentioned something which I completely resonate with, as being someone who's experienced having to play in your own coaching program, that when you are somebody who's struggled with perfectionism and pleasing, it is so uncomfortable to actually take that step and start doing it, because you almost like have spent your whole life being so hyper vigilant about every single move that you do, trying to be perfect, and then suddenly you're almost just trying to let go of control. And it's very scary in that moment. So, for people who feel like they don't know how to let go of that control and just allow themselves to lean into that messy, like no goal type of play, what do you suggest that they can do?
Yeah, just validating like it is scary. It is like, because like the perfectionism, that trying to get the controls away, we're like sourcing safety and feeling that safety. So in letting that go, I think for one thing, it's like thinking about like the outcome you kind of want for yourself. And like for me, a big part of that has been healing the inner child, like thinking about the child within who is craving that spontaneity, that creativity, that sense of wonder. And for me, it was really painful to think about that child within, to think about how, as a really little kid, I was so playful and imaginative. And, if I wanted to dance, I was just dancing. I wasn't looking at my belly or wondering what I looked like as a really, really young kid. And then, obviously, like I did take dance, and it started becoming about perfectionism. But before that happened, and I believe all of us, like in our soul, have that, beautiful, playful spirit. And so for me, a way to start reconnecting with that was thinking about my inner child, like having photos of me, whether it was just like on my desk or on my screensaver on my phone, and just thinking like, what do I want to give her? I feel like I've abandoned her for so many years. She has felt so unloved. She has felt like she's not good enough. She's felt like she's had to prove herself. And it can be really sad actually to think about all that. But it's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to change the narrative. I'm going to rewrite this. I'm going to start showing up for her. And although it's uncomfortable for me, I can still choose to show up with her and think about, what does she need? What can I give her? And for her, it's like she was tired of being so rigid. She was tired of all the control. Like, that's freaking exhausting, and just knowing how short life is. So it's like, okay, I'm going to get uncomfortable and know that this discomfort doesn't mean it's not for me. The discomfort means it's actually for me. And that's like a sign I'm on the right path. And then I think also it's like just starting small. So in terms of like, yeah, when we have this like fear, which is supernatural, we want to control things. It's like, okay, how can I let go of the control by like 10%? Or how can I make this 10% more fun? It's a really simple question, but it's not overwhelming. It's not like you're asking yourself, be like 100% more fun right now. It's like, like, I don't know how to do that. But like 10% is just like a little thing. It's a simple question, but it's like opening us up to more possibilities. So that has been really helpful for me. So it's like, how can we add like a little playful twist to something you are already doing? It could be as simple as just like playing some upbeat music while you're working, or doing a little dance break between tasks, maybe like doodling during a brainstorm, or just allowing yourself to say like an idea that's like not perfect during a brainstorm. So just starting to be like, okay, how can I make this 10% more fun, right? And again, thinking of that child within has been so powerful. They don't want to do things perfectly. They are scared of judgment. They just want to have fun. They want to explore. And so that helps me just like let go a little, right? So I just think of like, when the desire for control comes up, think about the child within who wanted to play, who wanted to be free. And then the more you connect with them, the more you will start trusting yourself, the more you will feel playful. And so, yeah, I think have that guiding question. Like, okay, how can I make this 10% more fun?
I love that. That's really nice. And it's practical that you can apply to anything that you do in your day to day. So that's really cool. And
Totally.
the other thing that you said that I absolutely love is how you shouldn't see that sign of discomfort as that something's not right for you. Because I think a lot of the work that you have to do when you are healing your inner child is very uncomfortable, because you're going against the survival mechanisms that you've picked up and have been using for such a long time. And I know that so many people will avoid leaning into the discomfort because they think that they need to be at a certain point where they feel ready before they actually go and do that. Like, oh, maybe if I am a little bit more confident, then I will go and do art. Or maybe if I get better at dance, then I will go to that dance class and I'll do it, instead of just being like, hey, actually, let me be imperfect and show up in this thing and have fun while doing it with no expectations. So it's really, really cool. And I want to kind of tie this a little bit more into one of the most common things that I hear that people in my world are struggling with, which is the people pleasing. And it's tied very much to perfectionism and anxiety. But I wanted to specifically address this because I know a lot of people will appreciate it. So, my question is like, why and how does the inner child healing help, especially in the context of play, with healing that people pleasing? And in what ways does the play work through that?
Yeah. So, healing our inner child is so important because our behaviors and relationship patterns are rooted in these past experiences and beliefs that came from childhood. So, as you mentioned, there's these coping mechanisms like perfectionism or people pleasing, that were designed to help us feel safe, accepted, or loved, especially if we grew up in environments where we felt like we had to earn our worth. Like, love was this conditional thing. We weren't inherently lovable. And so these patterns are then following us into adulthood, and they're starting to affect our relationships and leading things like, overextending yourself in a relationship, not knowing how to say no or express your needs, prioritizing other people's needs above yours. And so what I have found really, yeah, it was just so exciting with play, in how play can really help us heal these patterns because it is reconnecting us to the curious part of ourselves, the authentic, joyful part of ourselves that we often lose touch with. And so when we're becoming more involved with this like playful mindset, because I believe play is more than an activity, is a mindset we can bring to relationships as well. It is this sense of curiosity. And so it is like becoming in this mindset that is more free from judgment or outcomes or the need to be good or do it in a certain way. So we can experience more joy experience more spontaneity as well, which is incredibly healing. So then, when we're connected to this playfulness in our relationships, we're feeling safer to express ourselves authentically without this need to perform or please, right? And when you are in connected to play, which I say is really driven by love, and perfectionism is really driven by fear, you're able to set more boundaries, take more risks, build confidence in who you are without needing the validation from others. So when it comes to people pleasing, we remind ourselves that, oh, we are lovable for who we are. We don't need to create or prove ourselves in a certain way. We are valuable just because we exist, not because of what we do for others. So then it's like a way to reclaim your sense of worthiness that you had when you were a child, and like bring that into our adult relationships. So yeah, it's just like really, really healing for me in terms of my people pleasing and learning that it's safe to be me. Because I think one of the biggest blocks I had to being playful as an adult was the fear of judgment, the fear of looking silly, the fear of, yeah, just like looking stupid and being rejected. But it's like a way of reclaiming that and just saying, no, I'm going to step in my power. I am going to be playful. I am going to be silly. I'm worthy of that. And I will attract the right people. And honestly, I have found the more playfulness I add in my relationships, the more successful it is. Like play can really ignite that spark in a relationship, connect you with your partner, see another side of them. It is vulnerable, but also it's like that sense of curiosity. And I think when it comes to even conflict in relationships, like being curious as opposed to defensive and being open. So it's like bringing that playfulness to, harder conversations is really powerful too.
Yeah, I love that. And that's not something that I've ever heard put in that context. Obviously, there's a big thing about being curious and how that helps you navigate conflict when you open yourself up to try and understand somebody else's perspective. But in terms of thinking about it as a play is something really interesting. And I'm wondering if you have any sort of examples or like practical tips that maybe people in relationships who might be dealing with conflict or might just want to explore bringing more play into their relationships. What does that look like?
Yeah. So one of the things I love to do, I don't know if you do this with your clients, but it's like the relationship check-in, but we make
Mhm.
it like a playful relationship check-in.
Okay.
So you have like a set of questions. It's not too overwhelming. I have a list that's like 7 questions, but like first of all, you kind of start by like doing like a shaking meditation together, or like you let go of the seriousness, or like because so often if someone's like, we need to talk, it's like, oh my God, like that sounds so heavy and serious,
Yeah.
and I'm freaking out. So it's like, no, we're just gonna have like a fun time to connect with each other. So just we're gonna shake off any stress so we can be really present with each other, put away your phones. And then you can design what questions feel for you. But like for me, I always like to start in a positive space and just be like, what's something that you really love that's working right now? What's something you want more of? Like, how can we play together? Like, what do you want to do more of? Like, what fun do you want to experience? Like that kind of thing. And then like,
Mhm.
then yeah, have some questions about like, what do you want more of? How can I better support you? Things like that.
Yeah.
But just being really curious when you're listening to, not shutting
Mm.
down, not being super defensive. If you need a moment, like letting them know that. But yeah, I just know in the relationship I'm now, like I feel the safest I've ever been. But getting to that point was really scary. Like these conversations used to be so scary for me.
Mm.
And because I think, yeah, now it's just this like sense of play, like it makes it almost more fun, these conversations, just,
Yeah.
and you really do develop that sense of connection when it is playful. So instead of, yeah, making the playful, the check-in so serious, it's like, how can we
Mm.
bring some like lightheartedness to that and playfulness and, yeah, even like honestly, you can like dress up in a fun way if that feels fun. Like you could, like if you're going to a nice restaurant, you might like get all dressed up. You could do that for your check-in, or maybe you want to just wear like pajamas and a onesie, or like there's no right or wrong way, but just bringing some more fun to it.
I love that. And I'm actually going to steal that for my own relationship because we do a
Yes.
weekly check-in. Have you heard of the life dinner?
No.
Oh, so the life dinner is basically like it's not really time blocked, but we do it every week. And it's like what you say, it's a relationship check-in. We check in about where we're at in the relationship, what's working really well for us, what would you like to see more of, how can I best support you? But it can become a very serious conversation. And I just love the idea of adding in more play into it and just even saying like what things can we actually do that will make us have fun together. Because I think that you can
Yes.
get so lost in the seriousness of life, and even in relationships, it can all become very serious. So I love that, and I'm definitely stealing it.
Yay! Let me know how it goes.
I will. So we've spoken a lot about like your personal experience with play and how it's really helped you overcome your people pleasing and perfectionism. I'm wondering, you've worked with a lot of clients, and what other sort of breakthroughs have you seen happen with people when they start experimenting with play as a form of healing?
Yeah, one of the biggest ones, which we've touched on a little, like, is definitely embracing imperfection and starting to take more risks. Because I think like one of the biggest things that comes with perfectionism is like procrastination, fear of failure. So we just like, as you mentioned, like we stop and we wait until we're ready, but there is no ready. So
Mhm.
it's like, okay, we're getting off this hamster wheel of needing to be perfect all the time. And we're realizing that there is no one right outcome. There are so many possibilities. There is no failure, actually. There's only feedback. We're just going to learn. And through play, it's like, okay, we're starting to take things less serious. We're going to get curious. There's no pressure anymore to get it perfect. And there's just this relief. And like, I know I've felt that so deeply. It's like I experiment in life. Life is an experiment for me. I'm constantly experimenting in my business, my life, doing things. So it's like then with play, they're becoming open to more experiences, new ideas, things they used to avoid because they didn't want to look silly or make a mistake. So there's like this really big freedom that comes with play, I would say. And so I see people like starting businesses, making more momentum, doing all the things that they were waiting to be perfect. And it's like only in starting your business will you get feedback about it. And like, how do you actually feel? What comes? Like, I know when I started my business, I had a very different vision for what I was going to do. And things changed because I started and I got that experience. So I see that with a lot of my clients as well. And just that confidence that comes from it too. It's like when you start playing, you start to feel more comfortable being yourself. You start like taking up space. You start like actually liking who you are, and you feel more connected to your inner child as well. You're like that bold kid who just like took up space, and you have that self assurance now. You start celebrating yourself. You're not just dependent on external validation. Like you can celebrate your unique quirks, your own ideas, and I think you become more magnetic through play as well. Like people just really resonate with that. And I know we
Mhm.
mentioned it before, but it's really relevant for this podcast is just improved relationships and boundaries as well.
Mhm.
Like when we play, we connect with what feels good to ourselves. So we can say no to things no more, we can set boundaries. We know that like when we advocate for ourselves, we advocate for the relationship. So we're stopping the people pleasing. We're starting to build connections that are just more authentic as well, more fun. Like I used to host couples play sessions, and it was
Oh,
always so fun to see the couples play together and like connect in a way that they don't really on the day to day. And it really does like deepen the connection, and they see this other side of them. So the relationship's starting feeling like lighter, it's more fun,
mhm.
it's less draining, it feels good. And so also they're, people I would say overall are just like more creative, less anxious, they're having more fun in life. But yeah,
Mhm.
those are the main ones I see.
Yeah, I love that. And I remember you said that you read up on a lot of research about the benefits of play. And so, from what you've seen on your personal experience and what you've read in the research, I don't know if you know the answer to this or not. If you don't, I can just cut it out of the thing. But um, do you know on like a brain level how play impacts you and your healing?
What I would say to that is, I mean, when you look at the research about like play and brain health, there's a lot around how when you're playing, you're like rewiring neural pathways. And
Mm.
so when you're actually like learning through play, so especially kids, because they tend to do it more, but it's the truth for adults as well, is that the more we play and we like learn to do tasks, the more it like solidifies in our brain. But also
Mm.
through the act of playing, then we're engaging our memory. So our memory is strengthening. There's science behind that. We're becoming more adaptable, more flexible. So like you'll see, like I volunteer with Dancing with Parkinson's. It's an organization in Canada. So it's like seniors who are starting to have who have they're early in their journey of Parkinson's, they have it. And like there's a lot of like Alzheimer's organizations as well. We are adding play and art or dance because it's helping them regain their memory and strength. So yeah, and there's tons of research about just like play and mental health as well. So yeah, that's what I would say, like kind of my knowledge is for that.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think the flexibility thing is probably the one that I feel is most relevant to people who are struggling with the anxiety and the perfectionism, because it's so rigid, isn't it? It's like everything has to be this way, otherwise I'm not going to be okay. Otherwise I'm going to not
Totally.
feel worthy of love and I'm not going to feel safe. And it's like just allowing yourself to let go of that rigidness and become more adaptable and flexible is definitely the biggest thing that I've seen has been helpful as well for myself.
Yeah, and
Um,
I would say that's easily when, I start a group program and I say, oh, what are you most excited about? It's often like letting go of the rigidness. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. Like,
it's
and so,
exhausting,
and
isn't
I totally get that because that used to be me. I so remember, like, I mean, I procrastinated on my business for a long time as well before
it?
actually starting it, just because, yeah, there was so much fear. It had to be perfect. And now, like, in the playful mindset, it just feels so much better.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's an experiment. There's less pressure on myself. So but I totally get. So if you're at the place where you're thinking like, oh, I could never do that or whatever, it's like you can. Oh, I've been there. I totally get it.
Yeah, I love that.
Hmm.
That leads very nicely onto my next question, actually, because usually the people that are so disconnected from play are people that maybe never had the chance, whether it was in their childhood or in their earlier experiences, to get to experience play because of whatever trauma that they'd experienced. So if somebody's listening to this now and they're like, wow, like all of this sounds amazing, but I don't even know what play is, where could they start?
Yeah. So yeah, for people who might not have experienced play in their childhood, or maybe you don't have memories. So I know some people are like, oh, like I don't really remember my inner child, or my inner child never got to play. In that instance, it's like, okay, well, you get to have your second childhood now. We are creating that for you now. And again, I think it's really good to start small, because we want to just build like little tiny action steps into some momentum. And so if that is you, and you really identify with the perfectionism, the rigidness, there's a lot of self-criticism when you create, it has to be perfect. Honestly, the thing that helped me the most, because like I avoided art for like almost like, I don't know, 25, 30 years before doing it again as an adult, um, has been blindfolded drawing. So, and I know we got to do that, Sarah, but I love blindfolded drawing because the blindfold takes away the critical factor of our conscious mind that is judging what we create, that's saying this isn't good enough, this looks like crap, like why are you even trying? And so it's like we're taking that away. We know that it's not going to look good when we're drawing with a blindfold. We put on some music we like that like brings in just some like joy into our body because it's a song we like, and we just learn to start giving ourselves permission to express ourselves regardless of how it looks. It's a really powerful practice because it's fun, but it's also like deeply healing our programming and our conditioning. And so that is something I'd recommend doing as an adult. Like I've done this with a lot of adults who didn't really have a childhood or a chance to play, and it's been a way for them to start healing that and having fun because they really struggle with the self-criticism. And so that's like a fun way to start getting. And so that's like one step you can do, and just you can use your body as well as you're doing it. So that's one thing I do. And then kind of going back to earlier, like starting to ask yourself, okay, how can I start making this a little more fun? How can I make this task 10% more fun? Starting to do that, and also changing the story you're telling. Our language is so important. So if you're saying I can't play, play is not for me, I don't know how to play is hard, it's going to start changing the story to like, I'm learning how to play, I'm open to learning how to play, I
Mm.
am seeing opportunities for like, so just like shifting our language, not to like, I know how to play 100% or like things that don't feel real, but just slight shifts where we're becoming more open to it. So we can like, yeah, we're just like open to possibility now.
Yeah, I love that. That it's just developing
Hmm.
that growth, a, a mindset that allows for growth as opposed to perfection.
Yes. And then remembering what we said earlier, too. If the play is feeling uncomfortable at first, that means you're doing it right. That doesn't mean it's not for you. I know for me, like, well, gosh, I think this was 2018. This was before I started trying to play as an adult in like a genuine, authentic, spontaneous way. And I was a part of this dance program, and there were 200 of us. It was in Toronto, and age 9 to 93. So all ages, intergenerational. It was really cool. And for one of the warm ups we did, they had said, like, okay, around this gymnasium, just gallop around like a horse to loosen up. And I remember being so uncomfortable. I had no desire to gallop like a horse. I was like, this is so weird. Why would I ever want to do this? I only want to do dance that like looks good, or like is more choreographed. And so that just felt so off to me. I felt like no part of me wants to do this. But then I saw these women, their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, one in their 90s. They were just like linking arms. They were galloping. They were neighing. They looked like they had like the best time ever. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's what I want. Like I want to just feel good like that. I want to feel free. I don't want to worry so much what people think about me. So I shared that story just to say that like play really does bring you more freedom, but also it was very uncomfortable for me at the start. Like,
Yeah.
so just know that again, the discomfort means it's a good thing. Like for me, my resistance around play meant it was important for me.
Mm, I love that. And I think that leaning into that resistance can also teach you a lot about yourself and your patterns, right? And that
Totally.
self-awareness can be extremely helpful for looking at the ways that you are kind of almost can be holding yourself back and just examining that. I know that you do a lot of mindset work alongside with your play. So how
Yes.
would you suggest to someone to challenge those belief systems that they're having?
Yeah. Well, I think like a really simple way is just to be like, the story I'm telling is like, it's a
Yeah.
simple phrase whenever we're going down a thought spiral. It's like, the story I'm telling is this, but that's just it. It's a story. It's not necessarily a fact. Like, we can rewrite anything. We can play with our words. That's another way to play with the stories you're telling. So that's like a really accessible, easy thing you can start doing.
Mm,
Because yeah, like we all have different realities. We all have different stories, right? We could ask a couple to tell us like both of their stories. It might look really different of like how a situation went down. So yeah, I would say like just start challenging the stories you're telling. Like life is so short. You can create a new reality for yourself anytime. And what you focus on expands. So if you're focusing on how hard healing is or how hard like play is, that's what you'll see. But if you start opening up to the possibility of you having a more playful life, of you being able to connect with your inner child, like you'll start noticing that. You'll start noticing more moments of play and opportunities for fun as well. So yeah, being really mindful of that, but not being cautious to not overwhelm yourself. So I actually like to set a reminder in my phone where I just, instead of like where it says alarm, I just rewrite the words and it says the story I'm telling myself is. And so I notice when that comes up, it's like, oh, what story was I telling myself in that moment?
oh, I love that. That's such a great way to
Yeah.
start bringing awareness into it, especially if you're not used to actually separating yourself from the things that your mind is telling you. I love that. That's really,
Totally.
really good.
And yeah,
Really.
and like another one that can be really good because it's like I never want people to demonize their inner critic or to have self-hate around it. I think it's good to add playfulness though and fun. And if it resonates, like you can name your inner critic a playful name. You can like it's like, oh, that's just Brenda. She's back. And like you like distance yourself from your inner critic.
Mhm.
But I think it's important to remember like that was a coping mechanism. They're not bad. They were trying to do their best. But like once you know that, I think it can be fun to bring some playfulness to be like, oh, what story is Brenda telling right now?
Yeah, I
And
like
if your
that.
name is Brenda, I'm sending you lots of love. Not personal at all.
I love that. I love that. No, that's really
Yeah.
good. And I think to summarize or to finalize, the last question would be, is obviously play is a way for you to connect with your inner child. But if there was someone who wanted to do some inner child healing outside of play, maybe as a place to start, if the play feels too uncomfortable, do you usually have anything that you suggest for people who feel that way?
Totally. And like that's really what I started on my journey. I didn't start inner child healing with play. So for me, it was like I did a lot of, and I do these in my programs too, like inner child meditations, like
Mm,
starting to just like imagine my inner child, imagine myself sitting with them or like going in a field with them, trying to just build that self trust. I started writing to them. I started writing letters, just trying to again build that self trust. And like then I would shift. So I would my dominant hand, I would write to them, and then I'd shift my pen to my non dominant hand to give them an opportunity to write back to me. And often, like, they didn't have anything to say. My inner child, because it was so new to me. I hadn't built that relationship with them. So, again, if you're like writing to your inner child and you're like, oh, I don't know what they'd say or nothing's coming up, again, you're doing it all right. You're on your journey. Everyone has your own timing. It's like just keep going, building that relationship. And then a big way I started building self trust was through play because that's something
mm,
they desired, but it can take some time.
mm,
So yeah, I would say really helpful is like inner child meditation, just writing to them as well. But honestly, starting to do acts of like self care, like maybe eating an Oreo if you loved Oreos as a kid, or buying yourself an ice cream, or just like starting to buy yourself little treats. It
I
doesn't need to
love
cost a lot of money.
that. Mhm.
Yeah, give it like going on a little inner child date where you like do something for yourself.
That's beautiful. And I think that that can be such a nice starting point for someone who might feel just a bit too overwhelmed with the idea of putting themselves in a position where they feel really vulnerable and not wanting to mess up
Totally.
whatever it is that they're doing. The ice cream idea is actually
Totally.
very, very cute.
Yeah, I think that's a really good starting point. But also, I will just say that often you're capable of more than you think you are.
Hmm.
And so it's okay to challenge yourself too. Like, I know last week was a really heavy week for many people. I was hosting a group session, and there were a lot of people who are like, I just can't do this right now. I don't have the energy for it. But some of them still came, and they were like, oh my God, this is exactly what I needed. Like, I feel so much better now. I needed play. So sometimes it's like, again, we tell ourselves this story that, like,
Yeah.
oh, I just can't do this right now, or it's not the right time, when it's actually exactly what we need. So just like keeping that openness and curiosity and willingness to try new things.
Mm. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that that is so true. And it's often the
Yeah.
things that we kind of don't feel like doing, which are the things that we need to do the most.
It's so true. Yeah.
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 Amazing. Well, I mean, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and your experience with us today. I'm sure that a lot of people are going to feel inspired to set up a little play date with themselves and start a more fun approach to healing. And
Yes.
where can people find you if they are all about what you're saying and they want to learn more about what you do?
Yeah. So if you're ready to let go of perfectionism, find more play, you can find me at theplayfulwarrior.com or on Instagram at theplayfulwarrior. And I have a free playful personality quiz you can take to discover your playful personality. And once you do that, you'll get a journal prompt to help you connect more to play, as well as a personalized playful activity. And if you're like ready to dive deeper into the journey, I also have a program, Wild and Worthy. It's community based. Everyone's kind of going through the same. It's global community, and it's all about really diving deep into your subconscious mind in unlearning perfectionism and really learning how to play, heal through play.
But thank you so much, Kara, for giving your time. And I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. I can't wait to reconnect with you is it next week or the week after, on the 21st?
Yeah, whenever that is, but I'm super excited to play with you as well. And thank you for having me.
No worries. All right. And for those of you who are watching, thank you for tuning in again, and I will see you next week in the next episode.